Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Vice Chairman Tester, for holding what I think is an absolutely critically important hearing today. As you know, North Dakota is home to 5 tribal reservations that are located almost exclusively in rural areas, which makes it really difficult to provide critical services. And I will tell you, I just was at a hearing where they talked about kids driving around in Indian country holding up a cell phone so that they could transmit electronically their papers to UND so they could be graded. Think about if that person was a victim of crime and they had no way to dial 911, had no one to come. And I can tell you as a former Attorney General, a huge gap in our collective services to protect people in my state comes as a result of a lack of official law enforcement on the reservations where they have major crime responsibilities. And so this is an issue that we've all worked hard on, whether you're in Fort Peck or whether you're in Fort Berthold, as Senator Hoven and I have experienced these problems across the reservation. We want them fixed. And we want victim services to be made available to all the victims of North Dakota and that no one gets left behind. And so thank you so much for holding this hearing. We look forward to ongoing discussions about how we can improve victim services, but also law enforcement services in Indian country in my state of North Dakota. I don't know, I'm horrified. Who could sit in this room and not be horrified? 1 out of almost every 3 children between the ages of 11 and 13 in middle school tested positive for a sexually transmitted disease on Fort Peck. In what world aren't we horrified? Your testimony, Mr. Godfrey, I'm horrified. I'm horrified by all of this because somewhere along the line, Native American children are getting left behind. And they're getting left behind because they're in a jurisdictional juggernaut many times, or they're in remote locations where it's very difficult to provide services, and where we don't fund what we need to fund to break the cycle of violence and abuse. And so we worry about putting children in foster care. I worry also in safe foster care, which is critically important. Why are they going to foster care in record numbers? That's another statistic that we haven't even talked about here. And so we need solutions, and that's why Senator Murkowski and I have passionately shepherded a bill through the Senate, and we hope we'll get great traction in the House to try and find some systematic response, some legitimate response. I can only tell you as Attorney General in the 1990s, these numbers shouldn't shock me because I saw the exact same thing in the 1990s. This is not a new problem. Suicide's a new problem and a new epidemic, but it is a solution to a devastation of a human being. And you see it in these numbers. And so I'm here to ask you, just give us one idea, and we'll start down at that end, one thing that would make a difference in the work that you do every day in trying to protect kids.
Probably the single most valuable thing is trained personnel to respond and intervene, and that requires, predictably, funding. So a funding stream.
Consistent funding.
Correct. And so while there is people that are willing to do that work, and it's very, as one would imagine, very challenging subject matter to deal with, there are people willing to do it if the funds are there to train them and support them and help them be successful in what they do. And in Alaska specifically, that requires teams that can mobilize in short notice in small planes to go to communities and villages that are only accessible by air or boat.
I will tell you that through my work with Lisa, I can only say I thought my problems with remoteness were serious. I can't even wrap my mind around the problem that you have protecting a child in a village that is literally a 3-hour plane ride away from any help. Judge?
You know, remoteness is an issue, truly an issue in Alaska, because I do work with a lot of Alaska grantees, and I'm up there a couple of times a year, but still remoteness in rural areas in the lower 48 too are also an issue. Sometimes they don't get reported, and so they're continuing to be abused, plus also high suicide rates are becoming more common in youth in Native communities, which is a thing. But funding is always a help for culturally appropriate services.
So, you know, and I want to conclude with the chairman. Chairman, can you offer any real suggestions?
Yes, I think you had the answer yourself. Consistent funding. For consistent funding, we'd be able to attract qualified people. No one wants to take a job where you don't know after 30 days, after 60 days, after 6 months, or even a year whether you're going to have a job. If you do ride that out and last a year, maybe you get trained and you get offered a steady job over somewhere else.
I just want to make this point, I guess, to conclude, that it's ironic that when you look at what might happen in Williston or Watford City, you've got state and local. We are the primary. This government, the U.S. government, is primarily responsible for providing the network of support and the support services for Native American children. And I don't know how you can listen to what you all have told us today and what we know, but we hear over and over again, and not give this government an F in protecting the children in Indian country. And so we will continue to work to continue to believe that we can change outcomes if we all pull together for the children. Thank you so much.